Lately, I've been obsessed with a 3D modeling tool called Plasticity. It's really leveled up my 3D printing game, and I just wanted to give a quick walkthrough to show everyone how cool it really is. This video was inspired by SYJ's Make Your Own video. That line about the playing field being leveled really resonated with me. It honestly has never been easier to bring my ideas to life. So here I am, giving it a shot. Alright, this is going to be a little unhinged, but we're just going to go with it. I'm going to narrate as I'm clicking through the buttons on here. When you first jump into Plasticity, the settings are set at 1 meter. So you hear me adjust it down to 1 millimeter because there's no 3D printer in the world that's going to be at a 1 meter scale. And I have to move that box down, make it smaller, turn it into a rectangle. And this is the putty that we're going to use in order to really edit our AirTag holder together. I'm going to jump into printables, look up AirTag, and see if I can actually find a 3D model of an AirTag. Once you can download that .step file, you can actually just toss it right onto Plasticity itself. I'm also going to go and look at other sources of inspiration for AirTag mounts. You can actually see some really useful detail and definition that kind of breaks down the length of an AirTag holder, the width, as well as the height. All super useful things. So now that I have that information, I'm going to jump in, use it as a frame of reference. You're going to see me do some funky stuff with the windows here. But I mean, that's how people usually work, right? I'm trying to give you an unvarnished approach to 3D modeling and 3D editing. So right here, I have the breakdown of the dimensions, and I'm trying to make sure that my little box actually matches those appropriate specs. Because at the end of the day, it needs to be large enough, tall enough, and wide enough to fit an AirTag. I'm going to do my best to set it at 0, but it's not necessarily a 0, but it's pretty close, which I think is a funny approach to CAD, but it's my personal approach, and that's how we're going to rock with it. Here, we're setting it to a specific millimeter height. I believe it's 41 millimeters. Next up, we're actually changing the length. So again, we zero it out, make sure it's as small as possible, and then we extrude it back right out to the right appropriate length that this person's AirTag holder is, which would be 75 millimeters. It's actually pretty sizably large, so you're gonna see me have to do some funky stuff to readjust it. So I've managed to move that block into the right spot. What comes next? Well, we reference our dimensions again. We're double checking our measurements, specifically the 78 and the 64, because we're actually going to need those holes in order to put our M5 screws in. I've also imported in that AirTag holder, or specifically the demo AirTag, just to kind of give me a frame of reference for how large it is. One of the cooler things is that you can actually do a union of both shapes. It kind of makes it interesting because it's how the other person built it. But once you union it, it's actually a complete solid object, and you can use it all at one go instead of moving it as two individual parts, as you saw earlier. All right, so we're moving that AirTag model around, just trying to place it over our rectangle, just to make sure that we have the right size and the right dimensions. I find that a lot of this CAD stuff is actually just me guessing and checking a little bit. I'm not really the best engineer or parametric designer in the world, but I like to think that I do give it a shot. One of the more interesting things about Plasticity is that a lot of the grid lines also don't exist. So here you see me having to draw those lines on the halfway point, even measure out a line that goes out to the appropriate length for the M5 screw holes. And here I am creating a curve, which is their way of saying kind of a circle spot that I can use to cut deep into the clay itself. The idea behind it is that we're actually just modeling directly onto the surface what we want. It's kind of a new approach to CD modeling or 3D modeling. And you can actually see me doing the same thing with the AirTag, the 3D model of the AirTag as well. Is I'm placing it right on top of the box, seeing how much space it would take, and then also checking maybe would I want to leave a hole in there that would be the size of an AirTag if I wanted to screw it in. Right now I'm just going and cleaning up my workspace, so now I've left 2 M5 holes, and I'm going to do this thing called a Boolean action. But really what I'm trying to do is actually just cut directly onto the surface the columns for the M5 screws. So we'll have a spot where we can put in our screws when we want to screw them in and make sure we secure it deep into a bike. As you can see, I've also emptied out the hole in the model itself, and I suddenly realize, oh, I didn't center the AirTag at all. So I'm in a mid panic right now, so I'm redrawing those lines so I have a point of reference for where the middle is, and I'm realizing that my fake AirTag is completely not in the middle at all. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of adjusting, and again, this is to the horror of every engineer that's out there, but we're just gonna eyeball it, right? Try to make sure that it's kind of in the middle, and it should be good enough. I have found personally that 3D modeling has been very forgiving. As you can see, we have our 2 M5 holes, we have our AirTag that's perfectly centered this time, and we're able to confirm that, hey, this box is large enough that it could fit an AirTag if it needed to. Now I'm kind of thinking through my initial process, and I'm saying, hey, instead of actually excavating the hole in the AirTag, what we should do is create a column section that opens downwards and allows us to actually have an empty hole for the AirTag to go in, right? Because then it would sit flush, and when you place the AirTag tracker against the bike, you're actually securing it against the frame itself. If I had more time, and I think you might see it in the thumbnail of my video, I built a hole for the AirTag to be placed in. In this case, now I've put it in the slicer, it's modeled it, and then when you click slice, you can actually see the specific filaments that the 3D modeler will actually go through in order to create this AirTag holder. It's pretty cool though, right? Because what we've done is we've created something that's never existed before, put it into Plasticity, and now we can see it just straight up being made. I have an Anchor Make printer, which I bought back on May 1st, 2023, so I'm honestly a little bit late to the game, but if Bamboo wants to sponsor me, I'd be totally happy to use one of their A1 printers. As you can see, it takes about 23 minutes for it to print, but one of the coolest things is just seeing what your creation was completely alive. I designed this just freehand in the past like 30-40 minutes, and I'm actually able to pull it off the print bed, look at it. There's a little bit of ugly filament on there, but nothing some elbow grease and sandpaper can't fix. And if I pull one of my trusty AirTags, you can plot it right in there. Voila, we're done. Pretty cool stuff. Thanks for watching.